Sorry, I get like a little emotional. You got this. Go ahead.
When you open the heart to one thing, you open the heart to other things as well. Hello, and welcome to the Critters and Cultures podcast, the podcast where we explore the fascinating intersection of animal welfare and cultural diversity. I'm your host and veterinarian, Dr. Azalia Boyd, ready to uncover how cultural differences influence, enhance, and sometimes challenge the way we care for animals and relate to each other. Join us on this journey through global traditions, learning from diverse perspectives and advocating for empathy and respect in all of our interactions. This episode is made possible thanks to Maddie's Fund, championing a more inclusive, innovative, and compassionate world for pets. And for that, I will always say hashtag thanks to Maddie's. And to the listeners, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Critters and Cultures. If something resonates with you during the podcast today, please feel free to send me a direct message or comment below. So on this episode of Critters and Cultures, I am so excited to introduce another wonderful guest for this season, Sabrina Fatralda. Sabrina Fatralda is an Eastern European Canadian animal welfare leader with a rich heritage rooted in Romani descent. With over 15 years in the field, from co-founding Urban Tales Animal Rescue in Ontario to her current role in international outreach with stray dog support, Sabrina centers cultural humility, sustainable partnerships, and empowerment. In Egypt, her work includes training shelter staff, reforming animal welfare norms without imposing a Western savior complex, and leading youth equine programs in Cairo. Sabrina, I hope that kind of sums up all of the amazing work that you're doing. I mean, it's just a pinch, right? But thank you so much for joining us on the conversation today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a real honor.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so let's dive into it. We've chatted before, and let's just, I kind of know a little bit about you, but I want the listeners to learn a little bit about you. So I always start with an icebreaker question, and this icebreaker question is for you. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
All right. If your cultural heritage could speak through an animal, what animal would it be and why?
So I think it would have to be the horse. You know, within my heritage, there's a deep-rooted connection with the horse, and there's something in the stillness of a horse, you know, the way they carry generations on their body and the way they listen before they move. And, you know, they've always held such a deep space, in my people's lineage, through the migration through Europe. And we're really a life force for my people. And throughout my life now, I've gone through these like ebbs and flows of, this deep respect and admiration for the horse, but also fear. And I find the more that I am moving to a place of reclaiming my heritage and understanding, the importance it has for me and for my work, I am just like falling in love with this incredible being and just really rooting in like what an absolute gift it is to be around one and to bear witness to one.
Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about your work with Equine right now. Let me tell you, I have respected horses pretty much my entire life. They demand respect, right?
Yeah.
They're massive in size, but you're right. There is a stillness to them. As fast as they are, there is this like calm stillness that they have. And that's beautiful that you say that. I want to acknowledge your background, your heritage. So can you share a little bit about your heritage?
Growing up in the West, like, here in Canada, I was very much raised where the cultural representation of, my lineage and of Romani people was something that was really negative. So it was something that I, hid for a really long time. And, now I'm very much in a space in my womanhood of, understanding that this is something that I am now very proud of. And, my culture has faced immense cultural appropriation. And I think that, as I moved through life here in Canada and in my work, I really felt connected to other communities that were going through, the same. And it was something that where I didn't have my own community here of Romani people. So I would latch on to anywhere I felt someone else was othered. And that was a safe space for me. But a lot of people don't know during, the 15th century, like the persecution, Romani people were enslaved for over 500 years. They did not have the rights to own their own land. And, in half of Europe, they also, did not have the rights to travel. So, travel is a big part of our culture. And they were really forced into a system where they could not stay, but they could not leave, even to this day, don't have the same access to education, to healthcare that other people in the Eastern European countries have. And it really just shines light on how, sorry, I get like a little emotional.
Yeah, it's okay.
But yeah, just like
Yeah.
how so long a group of people and a culture of people and a spiritual belief system can just be lost to, general society, and the lack of curiosity that people have for other cultures and the lack of compassion that people have to understanding other people's ways of lives, and how that can integrate into our culture now, into our society now. And, instead of othering people constantly, coming to a place of being able to honor, respect, and love the differences from other cultures like my own and many others.
That is so layered.
Mm.
It is so layered. There's so many thoughts that are going through my head. And I hear you 100%, which is part of the reason why the podcast was birthed, right? A lot of individuals don't have that curiosity to learn more about other cultures, right? It is, whatever the dominant culture is in that society, that's what we're going to follow. That's what we're going to abide by. That's what's right. Everything else is wrong, right? Or as you said, everything else is othering. Thank you so much for getting emotional with us in that moment. And just like, I felt that 100%. I also kind of feel it as an African American woman hearing in full transparency. I don't know a lot of the history of the Romani people. So this is a big learning for me having this conversation with you. So I appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much history there that trying to sum
Yeah.
everything up in a short period of time is hard. And, like I said, I'm still moving through a space of, really deepening my understanding of our history of,
Yeah.
not just our cultural and spiritual teachings, but how, the Romani people have moved through the world and how that's also shaped our culture from beginning to
Yeah.
now.
What is a common misconception or something that you want to debunk about what people think about Romani people?
The number one is that they don't have a home. Being on the road has always been a choice. It always was a choice. It was a way of life. And there's this huge misconception that, Romani people don't have anywhere to live. So they're, in caravans traveling and running around from city and country to country to steal, what is not theirs. But there is a deep spiritual belief in our culture that land is not owned, by one. Land is for everyone. And there's a deep honor and respect to the land and being able to move and migrate with it. Another big one that I touch up on a lot, and it's a great opportunity for me to educate people, is the term gypsy. That's
Mm.
majority of people don't know Romanes, but they know the word gypsy. And, it is something that felt very much being, misnamed in a way has stolen the sacredness of who I am, my lineage and my people. And it's a very derogatory term. It's not one that, we are comfortable with being used. And here in Western society, it is really glamorized. It's consumed. It is something that has this notion of wild and erotic. And it's a deeply offensive term. So if anybody can take away from that, it is not the way that majority of us like to be referenced. And our culture is Romanes. We are Romani people. And just a deeper understanding of, when they use that term or want to appropriate it, with the way they dress, with, some of our spiritual teachings like tarot, to take a moment and really reflect and honor that this is a lineage, for thousands of years for people. And we deserve the right to have our name said the correct way.
Yes, 100%. So much there as well. And so powerful, so powerful. And hopefully, and I know, not even hopefully, I know that listeners are gaining a lot from this education that you're giving us today. And so I appreciate that. I wanted to kind of go back, and then we can get into all of your good work, because I'm sure so much of the depth of who you are as you've kind of, I don't want to say aged, but as you've developed and matured into your womanhood, right?
Mhm.
Where you are now proud to be a Romani woman and speak on
Absolutely.
that, right? Like you mentioned, you weren't always willing to say that. And I
Mhm.
just want to take a moment, when we think about why so many people move away from their own culture, right? And try to assimilate into the dominant culture. For me in America, in the US, it's the white American culture, the white Canadian culture where you are. It comes down to acceptance. Don't you think? Like acceptance, survival, right? And for
Absolutely.
generations, there's been this unspoken pressure that in order to succeed or in order to achieve your goals or just being safe, that you had to sound a certain way, you have to look a certain way, you have to eat certain types of foods or listen to certain types of music even. I shared on another episode, my parents are from Caribbean descent. We couldn't listen to reggae music out loud where everyone else could hear, right? Until Bob Marley became sensationalized and all of that, we were really quiet about even the music that we were listening to. Another one of my friends says that, and he's actually going to be on the podcast as well, speaking with a certain accent causes you to have certain discrimination. So straightening your hair, changing your name, downplaying traditions, all of these things are what people from beautiful cultural backgrounds do for safety and assimilation, right? And so I'm just so glad that because you and I are both kind of similar, we're like, yes, this is who we are. We're embracing who we are. And actually, it's the lens in which I do my work. Why the Critters and
Absolutely.
Cultures podcast is here is because the lens of which my family went through what they went through. And so I'm excited to get into your journey. How has reclaiming that part of your identity shifted your perspective in your work?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Like I want to add to, like, I have the privilege of, growing up and
Mm,
being raised in Canada and being Canadian Romani, where I don't
yeah,
face the same type of discrimination those do that live in Eastern Europe. Best way I always describe it is there's like a type of discrimination here, and then there's a different type back home. And in a lot of ways, I'm afforded safety because I live in such a diverse country. People sometimes think I'm Spanish, Indigenous, Arabic, and for a lot of my life, I could move through that. And I did. But when you're back home, and I feel this whenever, I travel back home to the Czech Republic, there's a different layer there. So I just wanted to, touch on that and give that respect to, Romani people that are in Europe, that especially in Eastern Europe, where you can't hide that you're darker than everyone else, or you can't hide that
yeah.
ethnically we dress differently.
Mm,
But travel has really aging, growing into myself, and being able to have the gift of being able to travel a lot has also helped me reclaim my heritage. Being closer to people who really stand in the pride of who they are has been a beautiful mirror for me. And it's something that I so admire in others that really awoke that within myself of, how could you have so much pride and I have so much shame? Being able to have that shift within myself and working with, other communities or other marginalized people who, have struggles within their community within the work that we do of animal welfare. It goes hand in hand, where you see this love and the struggle for their animals, but then also within themselves, if that makes sense. And I feel a great pride in people that are able to really stand rooted in who they are, regardless of the challenges or the stories other people place on them.
yeah. Tell us about the work that you do right now.
Yeah, so right now I am the Director of Operations for Stray Dog Support. We are an international organization. Our focus is really uplifting and supporting grassroots organizations on the ground in the countries we work in. So, a lot of the times you'll hear me reference our shelters or, our partners. That really is, we choose people and places where we feel the work needs to be done and it is being done by people on the ground. And what is required is a support system, not for us to come in and take over and do it all ourselves, but to really create co-partnership in supporting, their mission on the ground of what they're trying to do with the animals.
So you do amazing work, and I absolutely love that you shared that because so many of our listeners work in shelters around both the US and Canada. And a lot of the question is, how do we develop these partnerships? And I think such a strong point that you just made is we are amplifying the work that people are already doing within their communities, right? Such a big part is, yes, we have the resources to support, we have the hands, the knowledge, and all of that to support, but we just need to add to what people are doing and partner with them. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
like we discussed before, even though it's an international context, but, even locally, in the US and Canada, it's really understanding the community that you're trying to serve. That's number one. And moving through a space where you are there as a support,
Yeah.
and lasting change really is a ripple effect, right? So what you do and how you show up in partnership now determines how others will within the community will show up.
Right. And so what would you say are the reason, like, how do people learn about the communities that they're going to help? So you're doing some work right now in Cairo,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And so how did you learn about the community before you started working in the community? That's really hard.
Yeah, I will say, majority of it is hands-on. So I think a big component is really spending time with community members, getting to understand their culture, the way of the land, and you can do a lot of that. Like, we are in an age right now where technology is, and information is at our fingertips. So taking the initiative, time, and care to understand and research where you're about to go in and work is a big one. If you're
Yeah.
not able to go and be on the ground, right? Understanding the dynamics, what is the education system like? What is the poverty sector like? What is healthcare like? What are women's rights, where you're going in, to get a general understanding. But the number one and the greatest teacher will always be community, and we'll always be having those conversations with people that are there. I do a lot of my talks on Zoom,
Yeah.
so even, before going into Egypt for the first year, it was really building and cultivating those relationships by taking the time to have the conversations,
Yeah.
to listen, to learn as much as I could without trying to go in right away and be like, I have the answers and I'm going to solve this, or my lens is
Yeah.
the way. And just having that curiosity to understand the person on the other end. I think if
Yeah.
you are able to move in that way, you will have such a beautiful, beautiful understanding that is so real and so honest about whatever place or community you're trying to go into, affect change for animal
Yeah.
welfare and for the community as well.
Yeah, I'm not here to fix it. I'm here to support what you're already doing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So you have spent time now on the ground. Tell me a good, impactful story, something that connects the work that you do, the cultural relevance of the work, and the families that you're impacting with the work that you're doing.
Okay. Yeah. So I have the honor, and we at Stray Dog Support have the honor of being in partnership with Estar. They are a equine sanctuary in Egypt. It's the Egyptian Society for Defending Animal Rights. Salwa, the founder, is just one of the most beautiful, beautiful souls that I've had the privilege of meeting and who I have a very deep love for. And a big component of the equine sanctuary is supporting at-risk youth, specifically boys, within the rural community because it is outside of urban Cairo, where it's very different than the hustle and bustle of downtown, and it's more village and community based. There also is a large lack of resources, education, and jobs in that area. And Salwa, has a deep belief of generational change, and that's starting with youth. So she employs young men who don't have the opportunity for a job. Many of them are supporting their entire families. Some of them are the only men in the household, and again, culturally, depending on the religion in some places like Cairo, women don't necessarily go out in the job force. So that is, a responsibility for the man, whatever age. And some of the boys that come and work in the equine sanctuary are as young as 9. They're like, we joke and we call them the apprentice, like an apprenticeship with horses.
Nice.
And it's so beautiful to see, like on one point, we are welcomed with such a level of respect and admiration and kindness. And every time it just brings me to tears to see how not just the boys and the men there are so excited to show the work that they're doing and to show us, how well they're doing, but how their families also want to reciprocate that gratitude. And they make us the most beautiful spread of food. Like, it is overwhelming to see how the mothers, the aunts, the sisters, everybody is working. You can see they work for days to prepare for us to come in to be able to share this feast together. And it's a very emotional process for me because I can see the pride, and I've had the opportunity to specifically thank some of the moms, to see the pride that they have in their sons. To see them receiving the thanks from us coming in is such a gift that I've had in my life that it will always stay with me. And
Yeah.
watching the older boys with the younger ones and them really being the ones to teach, and seeing moments where like they're a little nervous, and then the older boys are like telling them like, you got this, go ahead.
No.
It's such a beautiful reciprocity that I see here, where
Yeah.
a younger generation is being afforded, a different way of life, a different future, really, and
Yeah.
also a deepening of loving and caring for animals. And my mind always goes to the place of like, gosh, I'm so excited to see 20 years from now, how does this ripple and change these young men? How do they show up in the world because of this? Because they
Yeah.
are given a safe space to learn, to grow, to teach, and to really be in an environment of compassion and love towards other beings. How does it change them? How does it change their relationships with other people, with their community, right?
Yeah. What does it open their heart? What else does it open their heart to? Right? When you open the heart to one thing, you open the heart to other things as well.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so here at the sanctuary, starting with the youth, amazing,
Mhm.
because yes, this is where we're talking about, okay, now we're going to see sustainable changes if we're doing the right thing. And we're starting with the new generation, right?
Absolutely.
And that is completely amazing. And, for the women and the families to provide you all with meals as just a
Ugh,
thank you.
yeah.
I mean, how amazing is that, right? You are allowing my 9-year-old son to work and open his heart and to feel pride and be proud of himself that
Yeah.
he's able to provide for our family. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
for supporting this. And I absolutely love that. But Cairo does have, stats wise, roughly 12 million homeless individuals, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot. 3 million children even living on the streets. So a very high population of unhoused youth as well,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So this kind of gives them a way off the streets, a way into work, right? A way to get back to their families, which I love
Yeah,
that.
you really do see it. My first trip out there was emotionally very challenging for me. I saw things that were very complex and hard to digest. And it's a space where you move through such sacredness and such overwhelming beauty for the culture and the heritage and the land itself. The land has its own presence there and you really feel it. But it is just this incredible contrast to also the poverty and the displacement. And, I've had several instances where, I just was brought to tears because of some of the things that I've seen, and this deep need of the mother archetype in me of wanting to just scoop up and say like, I can help. So I think what Salwa is doing and why I so deeply want to support her mission, and I want Stray Dog Support to moving forward in 2026 to have a deeper focus on, SDAR and this youth program, is because there is such a deep need for it. Like you mentioned, there are so many children that are displaced, that are homeless, that are not protected, and they're not safe.
Such a heavy conversation, and I can only imagine actually being there, how emotional and almost a sense of just responsibility for humanity in general, right? This episode of Critters and Cultures is brought to you by Maddie's Fund, a family foundation that believes in a world where every pet has a loving home and every family has the support they need to stay together. Inspired by a beloved miniature schnauzer named Maddie, the fund is transforming animal welfare through innovation, education, and equity, whether it's funding groundbreaking foster programs, supporting community collaboration grants, or offering free online learning for animal care professionals. Maddie's Fund is investing in the people and the ideas that move us forward. They also believe that inclusion matters because real change happens when we uplift every voice in this work. Learn more, get involved, or start learning today at maddiesfund.org. And as always, I will always hashtag thanks to Maddie. Thank you, Sabrina, so much for that. Now, you were just mentioning support. How can individuals, listeners, viewers support the work that you guys are doing so that 2026 can look exactly the way you guys want it to?
Yeah, so there's many ways to support. We're always looking for new team members that feel inspired, that want to do the work, supporting us through following us on our social media, becoming a monthly gift giver. Our financial donations are, what ultimately lead us to be able to give back to, our partners on the ground. But even anybody that's just interested to learn more, I really love and open the opportunity of anybody that is curious about animal welfare and has questions and is like, hey, I want to help in some way, but I don't know how. I always urge you, reach out. You can reach out to me directly. We'll, insert all the information and see how we can, create something together that can be supportive for some of these programs that we really want to enhance for the coming year.
Perfect. So that's for everyone that's listening or watching. That's how we can support. There are also a lot of listeners and viewers that do global international work. Sabrina, I went to Colombia and I did a spay and neuter campaign in Colombia with a beautiful organization that I love so much called Colombia Animals, or Colombia Animales. And prior to, I realized that there were people from everywhere that came in. So people from Canada, from Brazil, from Europe, and everyone came in to participate in this spay and neuter campaign. And one of my jobs was to give a cultural intelligence class to the participants before we actually went into this community. And it was so interesting to see how many people thought they didn't need the class. So it's like when people hear that they're going to learn about, how to be culturally intelligent or agile, it's like, oh, I already know this. Is this a DEI conversation? Like that whole thing. And at the end of the session, people were actually coming up to me saying, oh my gosh, thank you. I needed to have that conversation around privilege and power, which are words that you mentioned. I traveled everywhere, but no one's ever made me open my lens like that. I feel like a lot of times people will go internationally and they will, take photos and the people become props for their social media. And maybe it's more about the travel and less about the work. I don't know. But, what is something with someone who's so passionate about the work that you do and the families that you reach and the communities that you reach? What do you wish more global animal advocates understood before stepping into this work? Does any of that resonate with
Oh,
you?
big time. Yeah, you just hit a big one for ethical storytelling, which is a big one for me
Mm,
as well. But I don't think we have
mm.
the time to get that's a whole other thing. Yeah, I think it's having good intentions it's very admirable, but it's not enough. And walking with humility, it means not assuming you know better. And it means investing into understanding. And a lot of the times, we have these big dreams of wanting to change the way, another community, supports their animals. And a big one for me is a lot of the times in global rescue, people see suffering and assume neglect. And that's a big misconception that a lot of people in animal welfare have. They see animals suffering and instantly it is because the people are doing it on purpose. And really moving through a place of, a one health approach for me is the key to see lasting change in international rescue, but also, on the ground locally too. Humility would be the biggest one. It's a hard one for a lot of us. I've faced that lesson many times as well in my work, but having a lens of humility before you step into any space and
Yeah.
understanding that through that, you will actually be able to help so many more animals in the process by humbling yourself to say, okay, I have knowledge, I have the skill set and the privilege to make
And the
a change
privilege.
here.
Yeah.
but it's not my role to do this for you. It is
Yeah.
my role and my wish to do this with you. And I really believe with all of my heart that that is the only way we're going to see lasting change in animal welfare and remove this Western complex of we are going to come in and fix everything. You know, you see it a lot in Canada and in the
The
US with our
US.
Indigenous
Yeah.
communities, right? Of there needs to be a massive humbling in the animal welfare community of we have one piece of the puzzle to help fix this. We have one piece and they have the other.
Why do you think it's so hard? We're going totally off script here,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
why do you think that is so hard? I know that you and I, and you mentioned your work just coming from your background and the lens that we see things. Why is it difficult for others to kind of tap into that humility? I mean, I know you don't have the golden answer, but just in your opinion.
I think in general, not just with animal welfare, but just in life, I've learned it's fighting judgment, judgment of others, but really it comes from a judgment within ourselves. It's really easy to, cast the first stone and assume that you would do things differently or you would show up better in the world. And this deep disconnection we have with each other, with humanity itself, you see it ripple in the world. And I always say, when you see animals that are struggling, it's because they are within a community that is struggling.
Also struggling. Yeah.
And it's really hard for people to step outside of their own struggle, their own world, their own viewpoints to soften in a way to understand and move from a place of not judging. And it's a big lesson in life, and I'm still moved through that myself. And I've really learned that the more I am able to show up in this world and remove this cloak of judgment of what I perceive should be right or what is right and what is wrong within my moral compass does not mean that that is the truth. That is the truth for me. But opening up and showing a compassion and a love to just say, I'm here, no judgment, and I just want to understand, is really that first step of making any change, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And we're gonna close here, but I do want to ask you more about stray dog support.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? It's a lot of
So
work.
yeah, so we work in several countries. We span from India, Egypt, Turkey, Brazil, the Philippines. We do a lot of work out in Mexico as well, and we have many different programs. From our feeding programs to our infrastructure and shelter construction. But right now, I'll speak on Egypt because that's really my domain. Right now, we have a beautiful cross partnership with SPCAI and Worldwide Vets that I am really honored. I'm very proud and excited for that we're launching in Egypt. We have done a 3-way collaboration to try and increase the quality of care for dogs that are living within the shelter systems of Cairo.
I want to ask though, cats in Cairo,
Yes.
is it the same?
So yeah, but every country is different. The struggle with cats, the focus with cats is really TNR. There's not
Okay.
really a large support when it comes to like sanctuary or shelter
Okay.
capacity for cats. But there's also a really different lens of how culturally cats are viewed versus dogs.
Okay.
So not to say that street cats do not have their challenges. We focus majority on dogs. Like we do all
Dogs.
animals. We do equine. We have donkeys, sheeps. We're supporting. One day, Helen will get a call for a monkey, and we're like,
Oh
how
my
do we help a
gosh.
monkey in
Okay.
this country? Because we get
Yeah.
calls from partners all over the world that have seen our work and are like, please help us.
Yeah.
So it's really diverse, but the street population for dogs is exponential in comparison to cats, and the way in which they are viewed is vastly different there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was always curious about cats because I've never been to Egypt. And I just know that cats have been so revered from what I understand
Yeah.
culturally.
Mhm.
And so I didn't know if that was something that you guys saw or had to deal with, or if that's why most of the focus was on dogs. Just
Yeah,
curious about
no,
that.
it's interesting. Yeah, it's like, even moving through sacred temple spaces and the cats that live there and how they're treated
Yeah.
and versus the dogs. Like it's an interesting juxtaposition there.
Yeah.
But I think because the dog population of street animals there is much higher, and obviously due to the size and pack struggles with pack street dogs, they are much more of a nuisance, and they are treated as such by many people.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for all of the work that you're doing, Sabrina, all of the work that your partners are doing. Incredible work. You're an incredible person,
Thank you so much.
obviously, doing so much good stuff. And so I'm just make sure that everyone knows that the show notes are on the bottom. Please feel free to reach out to Sabrina. Sabrina, I'm assuming they can reach out to you directly and
Absolutely. Yeah.
follow on your socials and follow your stories, because now you have a world of additional other followers that want to keep going with you on this journey. What's one moment that reminds you why you keep going?
It may sound simple, but when you have the privilege of being able to work hands-on with animals, for me, it is always the presence of just looking into their eyes and seeing a being that has overcome immense pain Like some of the stories are just so hard to bear. And seeing this incredible little animal, this dog that is just like, okay, I will trust again. I will inherently, I have to give love despite what I've been through. I have to show you love. And those moments for me, it's every single time. It just roots me deeper into this work and into the unmeasurable love that can be given despite all odds and despite the very worst that humans have done to animals, and they still show up and only want to offer love to us. It is the greatest gift I've ever been given in life to be able to witness and experience, and it stays with you.
Before we close, I ask each guest to leave a piece of cultural relevance, something meaningful from your life, your identity, or heritage that someone out there might carry with them. It could be a tradition, a proverb, a memory, a favorite dish, or a value that grounds you. What's something that you'd like to offer us as a cultural gift? And this would be for our listeners and whoever comes next on this journey.
I'd offer a value, bearing witness, how to hold grief and joy in the same breath, and how to stay even when it's uncomfortable or when it's painful, how to listen before speaking, and how to hold space for suffering to transform into beauty when it blooms. So to just simply bear witness to life, to bear witness to yourself and to everyone around you.
Sabrina, thank you so much for joining us on the Critters and Cultures podcast today. Incredible episode, incredible work that you're doing, an incredible soul, an incredible human being. I can't say that enough. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And thank you all for joining us on the Critters and Cultures podcast, where we explore the deep connections between humans, animals, and the world around us. Remember, every person has a story, every creature has a story, and every culture has its wisdom. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep discovering the wonders of our shared world. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.